Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 633, releasing October 4 in theaters across the US as well as digital and on demand, is The Radleys, a horror comedy that centers on a seemingly normal family who harbor a dark secret. They are actually vampires. With its blend of suburban satire and bloody vampiric horror, the Radleys proves that even the undead can't escape the pressures of middle class conformity. And joining me now is the director of the Radleys, Mr. Euros Lyn. How are you, Euros?
I'm good, thanks.
It's really interesting. I was read that you always kind of had a fascination with vampires, even when you were a kid. It's something that I can actually relate to, even when I was a kid. I think it was I remember used to have this movie show in Australia in the afternoons. It used to show clips of classic movies, and one of them was one of the infamous shots from Nosferatu, the classic vampire movie. And ever since I saw that, I was kind of like, wow, that's what is that? And I just dived into it. What about yourself? What was it about vampires and vampire lore that really kind of like just spoke to you and it led to your fascination with that particular brand of horror?
I think there's something about the myth of the innocent, uncorruptible young victim, and the the badness and the evil of a potential threat. That feels like one of those universal stories about good versus bad, and about young versus old, and it's a story that feels like it's transcended the ages, and it really caught my imagination as a child. This idea that something could kind of come out of the dark and bite you and transform you into another being. But it's interesting because it's sort of vampires are really mercurial because it's kind of scary and bad, but it's kind of appealing and attractive at the same time, and it's one of the many contradictions about vampires that I've always found really fascinating. And then later in my teens, reading the Anne Rice novels, Interview with the Vampire, and the kind of grander epic sweep of historical mythology, with these very sexy mercurial characters at its center, really caught my imagination. So when this script landed on my desk, that was playing with yes, the operatic, grand, horrific lore of vampires, but doing something with it that I'd never seen before, setting it in suburbia, exploring what it would be like if the family next door to you were vampires, trying to contain and curtail their darkest, deepest desires, and fit in and repress their true selves. How would they cope? And it feels like a really interesting way to explore addiction and use the lens of the vampire movie to do something fresh and to tell a new story.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. The interesting thing about the Radleys when it comes to these vampires, they approach vampirism as kind of like a disease, and it's there's a lot of kind of like you know kind of like allegories towards, say, drug addiction or alcoholism, etc. When it comes to the vampirism itself, though, how do you approach it when you look at it in the context of the Radleys? Do you think the vampirism is a genetic thing? Do you think it's a supernatural thing? We don't really dive into the mythology of their vampirism per se. Did you have your own kind of take on that?
Well, they definitely have supernatural qualities. So when they are vampires, they possess great strength. They can control other people's minds. We allude to this idea that they can fly, even though we don't actually see them fly in the film. So So I think they definitely feel like supernatural beings to me, but I think vampirism, it's always the metaphor has always existed for disease and this sense of being bitten by a vampire. You know, a vampire, when a vampire bites a human, there's the potential for the human to be transformed into a vampire. The disease gets passed on through the infection of the blood, and I think exploring a very different disease, that of addiction, using this genre was something that really appealed to me, and I thought was quite exciting.
Something that I loved about the Radleys is the scenery, the location shots. Yorkshire, north of England, is big in that. It's really interesting because when the movie starts, blue skies, tall green grass, and then it kind of pans out, and you see kind of like this place. It's kind of like this mix of kind of like present kind of middle class, kind of like coastal town, but then you have these castles in the background, really kind of Gothic castles looking stuff as well. It's a beautifully picturesque, but you can tell the history is there as well, within the roots of it. How important was you to find a place that not only kind of represented that kind of like that context between the of history in regards to, because vampires are of course immortal in that context, but also the modern day as well, because these people are trying to fit in with modern day folk, and which I'm sure they have been doing for a very long time, and finding a place that kind of like evokes both of those emotions just in the scenery in itself.
Yeah, I was looking for a location that spoke of the battle between the wilderness of nature and the civility of suburbia, and we looked up and down Britain to find a place that spoke of that, and there's this town called Whitby on the northeast coast of Yorkshire, and it's surrounded by the sea on one side, the North Sea, which kind of pounds the town with these huge waves, and then encircling it to the south is a giant moor which isolates it, and we wanted to have the sense of this little enclave of civilization surrounded by wild nature. But there's an added meta element of Whitby, because it was the town in which Bram Stoker was first inspired to write his novel Dracula, and the abbey in Whitby is where the body first comes ashore on the beach at Whitby, and then is taken up and buried in the abbey, where we see the party at the beginning of the movie. So there's this whole kind of hinterland of mythology that suffuses that place. And as you say, it feels like it's a character in the film, and the relationship between this very safe suburbia and then the danger beyond feels like it reflects the dramatic tension at the heart of the story.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Yeah, have a great cast here. Damian Lewis, Kelly MacDonald, Sean Parks. Everyone's terrific in this movie. Two actors who really stand out for me though. The Radleys children. Bo Bragason, Harry Baxendale. Both terrific in this movie. They're number one, incredibly striking just in look. When you watch the movie, you're really compelled by them in that way. But also just the way that they present themselves on screen as well. I just couldn't keep my eyes off them. They have a very strong screen presence. And I know for Harry, this is like one of his first kind of like big leading roles, right? And very impressive work there, where his character kind of like the arc that he goes through. Um, what was it like casting for those roles? Because I'm sure when you have Damien on board, his production company's part of it as well, that opens up a lot of doors to try to find uh, you know do an extensive search to find the people who are his children, and finding Bo and Harry, I think is just a real coup on your end, because I think they're terrific in this movie.
I'm so glad you like them. I'm so proud of what they've done in this film, and you know, casting teenagers is you know, it's a journey because often, you know, these they're still in their teens, they're still in school. They might have done one or two things, but they certainly haven't got a CV and an IMDb page with, you know, rafts of credits that you can kind of look at and kind of go, oh yeah, this person can do that. So it's a leap into the unknown. But but in the audition room, I knew that both of them had something very special, and I think you feel that on the screen, and they both have nuanced, complex arcs in the story. Harry's character, Rowan, is falling in love for the first time with a boy next door, but at the same time, he's having to come to terms with this dawning realization that he's something other than what he thought he was. He's a vampire, and he has these incredibly destructive urges in him, and those things are in such such conflict with his feelings of love. So it's a love story, but it's also a story of corruption and coming to terms with adulthood, if you like, and of the moral complexity of adulthood. And he plays it with such maturity and depth, and you really, I watch the film and I really care for him, and I'm really rooting for him. And then Bo Braggerson, who plays Clara, goes through this incredibly painful, unpleasant experience at the start of the film that she comes out of triumphant, but transformed, and we see her kind of utterly in love with her power. She's discovered she's a vampire, and she's getting off on it, and of course you would as a teenager. You know, that's so much fun to watch, and it's really entertaining to be with her on that journey, and she does it with such charm. Yeah, so it's yeah, incredibly lucky to have found them both, and I think they're both stars of the future to watch.
Final question. We're heading into October. Film The Radleys comes out in the US October 4, October 18, I believe it's coming out in the UK. October is also, you know, spooky season, Halloween. It's interesting here in Australia how over the last 10 years or so, Halloween has really started to become much more popular. Trick-or-treating, houses, decorations, all that thing, all that stuff. When I was a kid, we never did it because, you know, Australia's, you know, extension of the UK, more of a UK nation than a US nation. But the influence of the US has been rather big on the last few decades or so. What is the Halloween like in the UK? Is it something that kind of like here in Australia that has started to sprout its wings, I guess you could say, and getting bigger, or has it not come alive there yet? Because I'm really curious about what it's like over there.
Yeah, for sure. Halloween in the UK is getting bigger and bigger, and I think that's a good thing. You know, it's fun to dress up. It's fun to have a party where you kind of dress up as your favorite scary film character. You know, it's play acting, which is kind of what, you know, we do for a living. Role playing as a character, being, you know, either somebody who's been killed, going to kill, wants to kill, and it kind of, you know, it's a celebration of life, but understanding that, you know, there's, you know, life is finite and there is death, and that's kind of why films like this are so interesting, is because they deal with those grander ideas, but with such a sense of fun and fantasy that we can cope, and we're entertained by them.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Radleys is incredibly entertaining for everyone out there in the US. October 4, limited release in cinemas and also digital and on demand. I do recommend it everyone. However, if you have a cinema near you, a theater, and they're playing the movie, watch it in theaters so more people can get their butts on seats in theaters and watch it there. Because I really highly recommend this, especially, you know, as we said, spooky season's coming up. It's a perfect type of film for October and Halloween coming up as well. And Euros Lyn, I thank you so very much for your time. Congratulations, sir, with your film. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I've been a fan of your work for some time now, so thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to talk to you.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.